think we have everyone here, if I'm not mistaken. We'll need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So move.
Can we make an amendment to the agenda, please?
Yep.
I guess we've had some online discussions online, and everybody said we should be discussing this opening. And there were some questions about the PPP loan and the EIDL loans. Could we just have a little bit of clarification and discussion on that?
I would appreciate that as well. Thank you, Linda.
Joel is here, so he's just getting signed in. Are you about there, Joel? Yeah. So he'll be right with you.
Do we want to put that into?
We could add it, but once we could add it as an item C under new business and voting. It is, you know, it's like, it's really, for me, it's just discussion, but it may end up more than that. And I don't know.
No, it's, we could do it right in announcements if you want. I mean, it's just to go over what the policies are.
Well, we do under announcements already have the COVID status update, and it would definitely fall under that category.
Okay, is that suffice for what you're looking for, Linda?
Yeah, that works for me. I just would like a little bit further information on all of this.
I agree, that would be helpful. Okay, so we'll add that as item B under announcements.
Okay, that works.
Or staff. Okay.
That works.
Do we have a motion with the amended agenda?
I make a motion that we accept the amended agenda.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
So we'll move into announcements. So COVID-19 update. Go ahead, Joe.
Good evening, everyone. Well, it's been an interesting 12 weeks and an interesting couple of weeks, but I will turn it over to Norm again, as I always have done with this. But we are in phase 2, and we have been working on getting some stuff ready for phase 3 as well. So, Norm.
Good evening, everybody, and members of the audience that are listening in. Here's the current situation report for Whatcom County and the state. Whatcom County now has a confirmed case count of 448 with 38 deaths. Washington State, 25,834 with 1,217 deaths. Whatcom County is currently experiencing an uptick in positive cases from private gatherings that occurred over Memorial Day weekend in phase 1. These events are now being called super spreader gatherings that have occurred since Memorial Day as well. So the health department is extremely busy doing contact tracing investigations, and you are seeing a daily increase in both the county numbers and the state numbers, in particular Eastern Washington. Unified Command objectives for operational period 14, they have changed slightly. Their first objective was to anticipate and develop plans to address additional waves of COVID-19 infections. It used to say second wave of COVID-19 infections. The key word on that is additional. They're still going to try and prevent and mitigate the spread of the virus, provide for the most vulnerable members of the community, ensure the adequacy of first responders and healthcare personnel for equipment and supplies, that's PPE, support and maintain maintenance of phase 2 status for Whatcom County. That is a new one. Keep the public stakeholders and media informed of response activity and manage a coordinated interagency response effort that reflects the makeup of Unified Command. Some of the key points in their priorities is messaging for what they're calling super spreader events. And those are the large gatherings that have been in the media, and also communicating out about phase 2. I don't know if everybody has their supplemental flyer we asked to be sent, which is what phase 2 means via the Safe Start Washington plan. But that outlines what the health department is currently trying to message out for phase 2. Our objectives have changed somewhat as well. We're going to continue to cascade out messages involving the impacts of the recent super spreader events, such as the press release that has occurred on Friday, 6/12 by the health department, and also the press release that was posted on our social media outlet today by Whatcom County Unified Command that states, what does phase 2 mean? We're going to continue to monitor the economic impact of Sudden Valley, plan with the community partners to processes to ease burdens on the community for essential items such as food, providing opportunities for the community to have options to ease the mental stress that's being created by even transitioning to a phase 2, which still has strict conditions. Part of that is the continuation of the food distribution program by the Bellingham School District through the summer here in Sudden Valley. So what is occurring at the dance barn every Monday will continue at least into the summer months. Phase 3 planning is underway for the restart of the remaining programs, in particular recreational services. Part of that phase 3 planning for recreational services is we have to submit a full safety plan for those activities for the association, and in particular recreational services such as the pool, the gym, meeting rooms, and other public events. Our current operational status for COVID-19 phase 2, social distancing and gathering, that's unchanged. Again, I call reference to your flyer that you may have, and also the information that's being put out by Whatcom County Public Health. Essential staffing is still working in a staggered schedule from admin services and accounting. Continue to message both the staff and the community on PPE, in particular face coverings, such as masks, bandanas, etc., and wearing those in public settings where you cannot maintain a 6-foot social distancing to minimize the potential spread of the virus. In addition to that, there is one other update on contact and our testing for COVID-19 that applies to our employee base. And I'd like to turn that over to Lisa to go ahead and bring you guys up to speed on that.
Hi, folks. As of today, we have contracted with Northwest Laboratory for SARS-CoV-2, obviously COVID-19 testing for employees. We have had a couple of employees be tested because of symptoms. They've been negative, but I don't expect that this is going to lessen, but it should probably increase as, you know, if it's just a cold, it's getting passed around, which means if everyone's got symptoms, they're going to have to be tested. We are working with Dr. Frank James, who's associated with Northwest Laboratory. He teaches at UW. He's got a huge background in pandemic research, and he will walk any employee that gets tested through what the results mean and what the next steps are. He'll advise us as an employer what we are required to do with regards to quarantine and maybe further steps in identifying who they've been close to, et cetera. And this service is covered by insurance. So each individual's medical coverage will cover the cost of this service. Do you have any questions?
Okay, I don't know if Linda's got one or not. I can see her trying to
You're
talk.
talking, but we can't hear you.
I do. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I didn't want you to hear my cat. So 2 things. Who do staff report to if they have symptoms?
Their
I'm assuming
supervisor.
you,
They would report it to their supervisor.
and then they report it to, what's the chain of command then, I guess?
What happens is an employee will usually text from home saying to their supervisor, I have a headache and a runny nose and a cough. And then the supervisor would say, okay, we need you to head on over to Northwest Laboratories, stay home until you have the results. And then they report it to me for record keeping and medical records.
Okay. Then the other thing is, Are we planning on, I know some places have weekly testing for their employees. Are we doing anything like that or only if people are symptomatic?
Well, the insurance only pays for it if people are symptomatic, and the testing itself for individual testing, if you're not symptomatic, is over $100.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Just wondering. Thank you. That's all I have.
And with that said, Linda, if, as the governor stated, if you desire a test, you can get one. If your primary care manager is a little less than hesitant, Northwest Labs, you can go there directly as a private person. And as well as if you would like to utilize the drive-through service down in Skagit, they will see you as well. And there's other opportunities to have that done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, our COVID-19 meeting schedule still is unchanged. And as we said, as Joe indicated, we are working on the implementation requirements for phase 3, focusing mainly on recreational services. There's a lot of items that have to go in the safety plan concerning social distancing for pools, the gym in particular, and also the larger or the gatherings that might occur both as a potential groups that want to meet the criteria and or privately, and we'll have to continue to message that out. Current status is the county, Washington counties in their various phases. Counties in a modified phase 1, there are 6. However, I did read today just now that King County is applying to go to phase 2. Counties in phase 2, there's 23, and counties in phase 3, there's 10. So again, the general criteria for phase 2, I refer back to your flyer that you've probably already gotten via email, and this has also been distributed on the website or on the e-blast as well. Enforcement of social distancing social distancing and gatherings for phase 2, that's unchanged. It's still very much a report up to the governor's office online, and also continue to try to message out the information. Unified Command, again, still desires that county residents or anybody refer to their www.watkincovid.com website for updated information. And they are continuing to message out pretty frequently, and will be increasing that effort with the intake or uptick of the caseload for COVID-19 in the county. With that, are there any questions? Thank you very much and have a great evening.
Thank you, Norm. Joel, do you want to give the update on PPP?
Sure. Basically, the big points on the PPP that we got. So we applied obviously for the PPP loan and received the funds on May 13, 2020, which starts the clock for us in terms of when we need to spend these funds. But the good thing is Congress has put forth another bill, and the president has signed off on it on June 5th, I believe, that gives us, or it gives all businesses 24 weeks from the date that they receive the fund to spend those funds on eligible expenses. So for us, that essentially means payroll and utilities. Those would be the 2 things that would apply to us. So it'll just be, as long as which we will. So 60% of these funds have to be expended on payroll. And in our case, we don't, the only 2 real categories that I talked about was payroll and utilities. So that would be the case for us. And as long as we basically hire people back, with which we will by the end of the year 2020, then essentially this amount will pretty much be forgiven for us. And now, whatever we don't spend, let's just say for some reason we spent, let's say 257,000 was forgiven and 100,000 wasn't, then if we kept this money, which we wouldn't, then it would be essentially it would become a 5-year loan at a 1% interest rate. And we have basically from the time of applying for forgiveness, we have essentially about 6 months before we would have to make the first payment. So that could really kick it into like possibly May of 2021, but that really wouldn't be the case for us in terms of we would just return whatever, for some reason, some portion of this was not forgiven. And that's basically kind of the crux of the matter with the PPP loan is for us.
So
So
what
what about
about
the-
the EIDL?
Say that again, Linda?
What about the EIDL that we took out? How are those funds expended, forgiven,
Yeah.
whatever?
Now that amount, so we got actually at the end of April, I think it was April 30, actually, we applied for that and got a $10,000 payment. And that amount is essentially treated like a grant, so to speak, like grant income. Of course, now that amount can reduce how much will be forgiven. In our case, it's just a $10,000 amount. But for us, it's essentially will be treated to us like grant income.
Okay, so I guess, and what are we allowed to spend that? Are there restrictions on what we spend that money on?
Not that I know of it, but I do know that like you're talking to the bank on this, the 357,700, then that amount would be essentially, the forgiven portion would be essentially reduced by that 10,000 amount that we received for that EIDL.
Okay, so I guess when and what sort of reporting do we do? And to whom to determine if we have to give any of it back, pay any of it back, whatever?
This process, we will start with the bank that we work through, which is one of our banks, Whatcom Educational Credit Union. So in time that they will start to ask for, say, like quarterly payroll filing tax reports. So then we'll start reporting that stuff to them and then applying for a forgiveness status on these funds.
So how and where are the monies sitting in our accounts? I know we have all these different things, and I know we have like cash on hand, whatever. Does this sit in a special little pot all by itself that you've given its own special number or whatever? How do we know when we've spent money out of it, that sort of thing?
This money right now is sitting in our WECU cash account since we applied through the WECU bank. And this account we really don't use for much except for like deposits, like home builder deposits, things like that. And then that amount is swept out back to like our CAB operating account. So that's where I'm intending to just leave it for now.
Okay, I guess we'll see. You can explain a little bit, to us. It's interesting of how do we know, like next, for instance, in April, where we have forgiven all of those dues. Are we planning on paying April's payroll, or did we pay April's payroll out of that account? Or do we, the money we had to spend on April's payroll, do we then move that money from that account because we know that we've spent that much on payroll?
So payroll amounts are spent or are funded out of our Mutual Bank of Omaha, the main operating account. But basically how this would work for forgiveness would be us turning over like quarterly tax reports and payroll tax reports to the bank. And then that's how they will start to do calculations on the amount that is forgiven that they in terms of what they gave us from the 357,700.
Okay, and WECU kind of handles that as a middleman.
Yeah, so we'll initiate the forgiveness application through WECU.
Okay.
So
All right, I think I kind of got that all figured out. I just was curious how do you deal with the money and that sort of thing. I think the only other thing that I'm a little concerned about is I know the board asked staff to look into this, and that was the end of, we heard of it until you had already received the money. I don't know who signed for the loan, but whenever
Linda, it's not a loan. It's not a loan until we don't pay any of it back. It is not a loan from anything. It will become a loan if we don't use it all in the proper way and keep the funds that we don't use. It is administered through the SBA for the simple fact that if some corporations do choose not to use it the right way or to keep the funds, the SBA is all set and ready to go to write the loans at that point. So it's not a loan.
Okay, I have a
here-
question to that though, then.
oh, go ahead,
Are-
Stephanie. then.
Wait, I just want clarification on that statement and then I'll let you take back over. I really apologize. You mean that, is it 100% forgivable now with the new laws in place?
It possibly could be, Steffi. I mean, we could end up writing it all off. Here's one thing I'm going to tell everybody. Pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. We're not, if we don't need to use it all, we are not going to use it all. We are going to give it back to the government and to give it to other corporations and other people who could use it more than we could. So we are not going to do what you've seen on TV where companies who take it, who don't need it. We're not going to do that. We're going to just take what we need and give everything back that we don't need.
I don't think that was anyone's concern, but thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, it's just, I don't feel that we should be hogs about this. I mean, if they're willing to help everybody out a little bit, I think everybody should have a fair shot at it. So, and if one company keeps more, that's not good for everybody.
I guess here's my only concern, and it's only a little one, but it's a concern. Somebody signed the paperwork for these two,
Grants.
two grants, we'll call them that. Anytime the board does this, it has to have a board signature. If it doesn't have a board signature and someone else signs it,
It was signed by, it was signed at that by the treasurer at the time, which was Leslie.
Okay,
Yeah, because another thing too, it had to be someone who was also a signer on her bank account at Whatcom Educational Credit Union as well, which will be a member of the executive committee.
okay. I'm just it's kind of like sometimes I don't know, it seems like there's been a couple times here this year where we've kind of danced around where the board gets to know about stuff, where people are signing things and approving things that really
Which
aren't
ones,
fine.
Linda? Which ones?
Well, when Andrew and Leslie came in your office on the 18th of March and made the declaration, that's against corporate code. The only time that you can have, the board has to make an effort or execs have to make an effort to convene the board. There was no effort made to get the execs to do this as a fully executive committee or to have the board approve this. And that's of a concern. And you'll note that when Rich rewrote that declaration, it didn't have just Andrew's signature on it. It had every single board member's signature on it. And there's a reason for that.
Mr.
And
President,
I'm just saying, I'm concerned about that.
Well,
Mr. President, may I interject for 1 second, please? If we are going to speak, Steffi has her hand up, but please put your hand up. 2, Linda, let's remember that we should stay on task. If we're talking about PPP, then let's stay on task and not go off into something that took place before.
Okay,
Thank
we
you.
can do that another time too. I brought it up once before.
Thank you. Steffi, please.
Okay. Not to nitpick, but Joe did ask her, so that's why Linda was going on that particular topic. But yes, I just had concerns. We can call it a grant, but the companies and the banks are calling it a loan, and we should have gotten, just the boards. I mean, it sounds like it could have been just, a 2-minute thing to vote on it. I'm sure we all are unanimous for this PPP loan. Just if we follow procedure, if we try and be transparent, I asked tons of questions and it was like pulling teeth. So basically that's what I'm not against this. I just want people to do it correctly. That's all. Just go through the right motions. So I feel like we should be voting on it or ratifying the decision.
Mr. President, Josh.
Sorry, I had to go off mute here. I don't want to stoke any embers, but is there anything else out there that has been signed that none of us know about, or that's going to come in to play later on?
I can say, I mean, not concerning any of this stuff. Really.
Okay.
Any COVID-19. It's just the PPP and that EIDL, those are the only two things.
Nothing that I'm aware of, Josh.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Rob.
Sorry, good evening, everyone. I was unmuting. I just want to make sure I'm understanding the grant loans. If I understand correctly, is the ground rules for these, Joel, or is it that they were funds available for companies for this association to provide payroll for people who have lost their unemployment, who've lost employment as a result of COVID, and aids in getting people back to work? So I think what I'm asking is are these funds primarily to assist us with bringing employees back to work that currently are not on payroll or who may have been furloughed as a result of COVID?
So basically, the big point of this PPP program was to help businesses stay in operation and also to continue to pay employees as a result of this pandemic economic shutdown. And at first it wasn't, I don't believe it was available to nonprofits such as us, but then the rule got changed and then we were able to also apply like other businesses can.
Okay, so then I think what I heard you say was there is a ground rule where if we don't use these funds for employment for payroll, then it becomes a 1% loan. Did I understand that correctly, or is that just too short-sighted under the rules?
Yeah, I mean, it basically comes down to at the end of the year, so at the end of 2020, as long as we've hired back basically we've restored our workforce to how it was before, then it's kind of like a little formula of how much it will be forgiven. In our case, since they've expanded, see, it used to be that, so we received these funds, it hit our bank account on May 13th. And then at that point, the clock was ticking for 8 weeks. But now thanks to this new legislation, that's extended it to 24 weeks. So that really kind of creates a period or a situation to where we'll pretty much be able to just, I believe, have it all forgiven for the most part.
Thank you. And then my last question is, during the application period, was there a very short window to be able to get the applications in?
Oh yeah. Matter of fact, just finding a bank to take this was really difficult because I called quite a few banks at the time when they finally opened it up for nonprofits like us to also apply for this. And then when I started calling around, because you need a bank to essentially put this loan in for you to the SBA program, and all sorts of banks, even our bank through Mutual Bank of Omaha, they were so slammed from the first round of businesses who were able to apply when agency like association like ours could not apply, that it was actually really lucky that we could just kind of open it up again for them to take more applications. So we really had to jump at it as soon as possible.
Thank you, Joel. That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. President, I don't see any more hands.
Okay, any other announcements? Hearing none, we'll move into property owner comments.
All right. Actually, before we do that, Steffi, you do have your hand, the icon for your hand raise. Are you trying to get Mike's attention?
Yeah, I just wanted clarification on that because now first they were payday protection loans, Joel, and now we're saying that they're grants or they're grant loans. I'm under the impression this is a loan. Joel, what are you under the impression?
If it's not forgiven, then it automatically becomes a loan. The portion that's forgiven will not be a loan.
Right, correct. But that's undetermined at this moment, correct?
Well, I mean, the thing is like with basically how this thing was calculated in the beginning was it's essentially 1 month of average payroll in the year in 2019 from all our quarterly payroll tax filings times by 2.5%. That's how they arrived at that calculation for that 357,700.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of like for this to not be forgiven, especially when Congress and with this latest legislation signed for 24 weeks, extending it to 24 weeks, that would be very unlikely.
Okay, right. I got that part. I was just clarifying that, I mean, what the program actually is. Thank you. That answers my question. So, Andrew, before we move on, did you feel like this needed to be ratified by the board? Mr. President?
Yep, thanks, Steffi. I just turning myself off mute here.
Mhm.
I don't think this requires a ratification of the board. But unless the board feels otherwise, we, could do that. Go ahead, Leslie.
Yeah, I think that it is, for all intents and purposes, for the next 24 weeks, the grant. Yeah, I think it's unlikely that we will go over into the loan, but at the point where if we were to take a loan out, that's where I think that the board should weigh in and vote on it.
Mm-hmm. I think it would be nice if we just knew that things like this were in the works, which, I mean, we did discuss it this time. Will we get some sort of breakdown then too? From, we had no revenue in April, and then we had, these payday loans and the EIDL. Will we get a breakdown of all of that?
Would you like one?
Well, I just think it would be like in the quarterly, with our quarterly report or something, right? We'll have some sort of.
Okay, treasurer and accounting manager, can you answer that, please?
Sure, I mean, I can put that in the next accounting manager report for the board later on in the month. Now, in terms of like the two things that we got, so we got $10,000 in the EIDL, which becomes a grant income in a sense. And then the second one is the 357,700 for the PPP through the SBA. And those are the only two things that we applied for and received.
Effie, what are you looking for? Are you looking for how much of it has been utilized? So in our next reports to say, yes, we have used 100,000 of our PPP or whatever is that, and it went towards payroll. Is that what you're looking for?
No, I don't think so. And honestly, I don't feel like, I feel like that the community is going to want to see just everything broken down. Like, hey, right, we forget, hey, remember, I mean, we're only as good as our last haircut. So basically people are paying dues again, and they're going to be feeling like, okay, we got all these grants and loans, what is the breakdown? I don't think they want to know where every penny of the PPP or EIDL went. I think they just want to see the cash flow, inflow, outflow, looking like this is what it looked like because of COVID, that type of thing. Because you hear people saying, well, we're not opening, our gyms, or we're not doing this or that. So just when we have the quarterly financials, I think it would be good to have all that broken down.
Mr. President.
Am I not making that clear? Can someone help me with that?
Sorry, I think it's a valid request. I'm just trying to see what information you want. I know Mike's waving his hands. I think you mean a forecast. Steffi, let's talk offline and make sure we can get what the community is looking for. Okay, I will reach out to you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, Paula, then Rich.
Thanks. Actually, I would go a step further than that. I would love to see a pie chart that actually does show where the allocations of the money went to. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I think, Steffi, I think that's a good request as a community member. And I know that grants have come up quite a few times in the past. And, the community has asked us, are we looking for grants in different areas? So I actually think that I love visuals. I think that they're great. So I think putting together something that has a pie chart or some graphs that really shows how we utilize that money and how it's helping the community, would be pretty easy to do with the information that we have available. Then again, I'm not the accounting manager, so I can't say it would 100% be easy, but if you could do that, I would really appreciate seeing that allocation breakdown. And then the other thing that I was trying to say earlier is my understanding, and just for clarification, is even if we weren't to use the money, which to me, the whole point that they went from 8 to 24 weeks was pretty much to make sure that nobody would have to pay back the payroll portion of it. That's why they went so much further with that. So I highly doubt that we would have any money left over from that. But if we did, if we give it back, zero loan, that's just money you can put right back into the system. It's only if we keep it and say, okay, we have this money, we don't want to give it back, that it would turn into a loan and we would have to pay any type of interest on it. So we can actually give it back free, is my understanding. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that that was understood. Lisa, do you have a concern with that statement? Oh, okay. I thought you were like, no. All right.
Mr. President, Rich.
Yeah, Joel, this is just a question out of ignorance. Are you setting up specific payroll and utility cost codes to be able to track this money?
No, not particularly, because for us, like, for example, when we applied for forgiveness through WECU, what they'll be asking for, because they've already told me this, is quarterly tax reports. So, and those are already captured by the payroll codes that we have right now. So those actually wind up on those quarterly payroll reports.
Okay.
Mr. President, I see no more hands.
That was great. Thank you. Thanks, Linda, for putting that on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, now we'll move into our property owner comments unless anyone else has their hands raised. John?
Okay. Yeah, we'll move into the property owners now. And there is a function here in Zoom, and looks like we've already got a hand raised here from Nancy. I'll go ahead and bring her in and just give your name and address, please.
Nancy Alionak, 4 Sandalwood Circle. Okay, let's revisit the breach of order that happened at the last board meeting. A former board president made a motion, and the current board president accepted a motion that stands in violation of parliamentary law and of Robert's Rules of Order. Roberts clearly specifies the motion lay on the table cannot be qualified in any way, yet it was. Plus, the motion is out of order if there is no other matter requiring immediate attention, and there wasn't. Roberts cautions, and I quote, "The motion to lay on the table is often incorrectly used and wrongly admitted as an order, with the intention of either killing an embarrassing question without a direct vote or of suppressing a question without debate. The first of these two is unsafe if there is any contest on the issue. The second is in violation of a basic principle of general parliamentary law," end quote. Yet this board approved the motion anyway, and this brings us to an ongoing violation of parliamentary law happening under this board. The law that rules protecting a basic right of the individual member cannot be suspended. This electronic meeting is run in a manner that spends a member's right to raise a point of order. The moderator does not respond to participating members' raised hands throughout the meeting, making timely points of order impossible. Our bylaws require an electronic meeting that allows all persons participating in the meeting to communicate with each other at the same time. Roberts requires Meetings provide conditions of opportunity for simultaneous oral communication among all participating members equivalent to those of meetings held in one room. Roberts further explains it is important to understand, regardless of the technology used, the opportunity for simultaneous oral communication is essential. I ask this board to follow Robert's Rules of Order and our bylaws and do not continue to suspend an individual's member's right to raise a point of order during an electronic meeting. Recognize any member's raised hand immediately, unmute that member, and allow the member to continue with their point. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nancy. I'll go ahead and return you to the audience here. Leslie did have a hand raised. Did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that this is a meeting of the Board of Directors, and people may observe. That's what's in the bylaws. People who are observing are not members of the meeting. And I think that in order to find the Roberts rules related to that, we need to look a little bit deeper.
And it looks like Nancy has her hand raised. I'll go ahead and bring her back in here.
Leslie, we are community member participants. It says so on our invitation to join the meeting. There's no question in Roberts or in parliamentary law that members have a right to raise a point of order. And in earlier versions, it was a right and a duty to raise a point of order at a breach of any sort of rule. And, you know, I let a lot of things go, but that lay on the table was a big one and it needed to be brought up. Talk to your parliamentarian. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nancy. Okay, anybody else with a hand raised? Just use the raise hand function in Zoom. It should be at the bottom of the screen, either on the app or on the PC or Mac. If you're calling in, you can press *9 and it'll have the same function. But I don't seem to see any further hands raised. Oh, here we go. Connie would like to speak. Go ahead and give your name and address, please, Connie.
Connie Hopper, 35 Tumbling Water Drive. I think Nancy made a very valid point, and I do think that you should want to hear from your members. My one question is, why were the April dues forgiven? I mean, that was very lovely, but why was that done without the entire board's knowledge and consent? Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. I'll go ahead and return you to the audience here.
Connie, hi, this is Andrew. I'll respond to that. So, you know, I stated after that at the next meeting that apparently that was stepping outside of the authority on the board president, which is why I asked the board to consider following up on that. And so we did make a consensus-driven effort to waive dues as a board, but that was in consultation with not only the treasurer, but also staff, finance, and Joel and our GM. So it was a group decision, and definitely in no way intended to overstep my boundary as the board president. So, but we did eventually come to a group decision to move forward with waiving April dues. Would anyone else like to comment?
I just have a board comment. I think what Nancy says is really legitimate. And I found, I don't know about the rest of you, but with these online meetings, we found out we can let the board vote privately. We found out that we can control meetings a little bit to allow candidates their privacy, that sort of thing. It's sometimes a lot of work. I don't know what I'd do without Lisa and John from staff. But I think that indeed, my understanding of Roberts is anyone at a meeting can call, either stand and either report a point of order or a point of information and be recognized by the board. It's really hard, you know, because are you going to have a bunch of people that are going to just want to hop in? But they're legitimate motions that can ask for a member of the audience to be recognized by the board immediately. And maybe that's something we really do need to all think about, and how do we handle it? And John, it'll probably be tons of emails between you and I again. But it's something we have to deal with. Heaven knows how long we're going to be doing this. And I think we owe it to the membership.
Yeah, if that's needed, we can facilitate that.
Okay, that's all I have.
Mr. President, Leslie has her hand up.
I would like to consult our parliamentarian about this.
Okay. We do have another hand raised in the audience. Mike, I'll go ahead and bring you in here. Just give your name and address, please.
Mike Wadsworth, 5 Western Lane. Yeah, I have two things. One, I often wondered at the live in-person meetings that we had, why we only got to make a comment at the beginning. They were all answered, and then we were silent till the end, and we couldn't bring up a point of order during a live meeting. That seemed really odd to me, in conjunction with other meetings that I have sat in. So yeah, you should check your parliamentarian and find out. Number two, I watched some of the finance meetings, and I wrote a letter to the board. I would have never known anybody even received it, except one board member did reply and say thank you for the input. I want to reiterate that when the governor of the state asks the agencies of the state to try to figure out to lower 15% of their budget because of COVID-19 issues, and when employers around the state, many of which I know people in this community that have taken a 20% pay cut in order to help their companies stay afloat and they keep a job, that we need to kind of do the same thing. I noticed in the View that you already hired a new person to do a job. And that person was not from Sudden Valley, which when you hire, I would think you would look within our ranks. There's highly qualified people out here not working that we could hire. I want to make sure that, or mention or advise or whatever I'm trying to do, the fact that we need to freeze increases. We need to maybe not raise the cost of living this year when people are taking pay cuts. Do employees pay for any part of their benefit package? Because every job I've had since 1985 to 90, I had to start chipping in on my insurance and benefit package. Nobody does the 100% anymore unless they're a corporate exec or something. There's a lot of homeowners out here, really struggling. Me is one. I've had almost 45% of my living expenses cut out because of COVID-19. So I'm kind of sweating this year out. And so I'm asking you to look at us in this filter of a lot of people are really going to have a tight budget this year, and we should tighten Sudden Valley's budget the same. And all, I know you want to keep good employees and they deserve their pay, but when everybody else is doing it, we should possibly look at that line of thinking too. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, we'll return him to the audience. Any other, looks like Nancy would like to speak here. And go ahead, Nancy.
Yes, I have the text of the comment I read, which I will email to the entire board so that any questions to the parliamentarian can be more easily made. I'll do that tonight after this meeting. Thank you. Done.
Thank you. Anyone else for property owners' comments?
Just want to say thanks, Nancy. That would be helpful.
All right, not seeing any further hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you, John, and thank you for the comments we heard this evening. We'll move into our new business with third-party elections. Go ahead, Linda.
Oh, it's me. Okay, I sent out packets to all of you on the company that we selected and stuff. So I guess at this time, I would like to make a motion to move that the board approve the entity's selected third-party vendor to handle the 2020 AGM.
I second that.
Thanks, Mike.
Discussion.
Mr. President, Leslie.
And I do have two concerns about this. The first one has to do with when we count the ballots in-house, the entity committee takes as many ballots as come in each day. They go through and they register them. And then if that member is not in good standing, they will mark it and make two different piles of them. And then I believe you try to get in touch with the member to try to, pay up so that they will be in good standing. I mean, is that the way that we handle it in-house?
That's correct.
Yeah, and this from this company, they're talking about printing two different ballots, and that's right at the beginning, and they will decide right then who's. And if you look at that section 7, there will be two ballot styles for the election: a member in good standing, and then the other. And then on item number 12. The UNELECT will provide the mailing lists in Excel. First list will be of members entitled to vote on all items for election, and the second, et cetera. And it seems to me that they are putting them people into two categories that they cannot get out of. Well, how do you explain that to me?
We interviewed and actually had Zoom meetings, much like we're doing right now with all of these people. And we said, no, we can't do two different ballots. And originally why part of that became an issue is we began the process looking at online voting. And that's another 3-hour discussion here, folks. So we're not even going to talk about that, other than we need to change our bylaws before we can even touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Okay.
And
so
we
you're saying
explained that it has to be one ballot.
Okay. You're saying that this is not accurate then? What we were given in our packet.
What I'm saying is we started out asking that question, but I believe if you look at their bid, it says that they will design all balloting materials, printing and mailing services for 3,300 official ballot packets with extra, and each ballot packet will consist of one ballot, so it's not two ballots. And that's why I'm saying we started out this process assuming that we could move forward. And thankfully, the two people that we singled out as our final two finalists explained to us why we simply couldn't do that. And what will happen is they will mail out packets just like we do. They will have a master mailing list from us that will turn into their form, and I don't know how they do it exactly, but they track much like they do. They don't sit down with Lisa and go through the things and explain it. Their envelopes all have barcodes on. Leslie, you have a magic number. I have a magic number. Lisa has a magic number. And when those are returned to them, they will basically go through and they will know whether Linda Bradley returned hers, whether Leslie did. There's periods where we can submit to them updated lists of people who are current or not current in their dues.
Okay.
Because in the very end, it isn't going to be until the very end, because actually people have until that Saturday before the AGM to bring their balances current if they want to vote on everything. But they'll still be able to find out if let's say I'm not current in my dues. When that gets scanned, they will know sooner or later that I'm not current in my dues. And before they actually count all the ballots, which is done by a machine, not a person, they separate those much like we separate them. And Enemy will be there to help them make the separation. I'm assuming that when they get, I don't know how often they collect from their post office box, but when they do that, they will send us reports that will say, here's how many you got back. If we send them an initial list along with these are the people that are not current in their dues, they're going to be able to say you have this many here and this many there, because they've read the barcode, which is much quicker than going through the process we go through.
Right.
Than they do. They're still going to have to make sure they have a signature on it. If we get any blank ones, they'll get put in a completely separate pile, because they'll treat them just exactly like we do.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're not sending out two different kinds of ballots that can't ever be changed. My second concern is, and this is just me, and it's not this company, it's that I am reluctant to go to an electronic balloting. I am of the opinion that you need to have a hard copy, a paper trail, so that if something goes wrong, you can go back and you can track what has happened. So would this company be willing to do just a mail-in ballot this year?
That's exactly what the quote's for.
Okay,
That's
we're not-
exactly what the final quote from Unilect is for.
And we are not
Like I
talking
say-
about electronic at all this year.
Pardon?
We're not talking about electronic voting this year.
We can't. We just simply
Right.
can't. We would be asking them to do something illegal to an online ballot under our current bylaws.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, Paula.
I just wanted to point out that Leslie's question came up because I saw the same thing in the, if this does go forward and it is signed, because there's a signing area on this, that number 7 in their process be removed, because number 7 does state there will be 2 ballot styles for this election in their process. So I know that's being picky, but I saw that same thing. And so under scope of services, number 7 does still bring that up.
Mr. President, AJ.
In number 7, you're saying you see 2 ballots?
There will be 2 ballot styles for this election, if I'm looking at the right one.
I'm looking at Unilect's page 2 of 6. And I'm looking at number 7 on that. It goes from number 6 to number 17. And number 7 says there will be 1 ballot style for this election. Each member in good standing, 1 vote per lot, may vote for candidates of the board, Members not in good standing, 1 vote per lot, are only eligible to vote for the proposed budget, and cumulative voting is prohibited.
I am looking at a different version than you, I believe.
Oh, all right, and that's possible, because
This
heaven
is-
knows we've gone through
This is
this.
from the
enough.
agenda packet titled 61520, but it's page 1.
Wait a minute, let me look. I'll go back to their old one.
It's actually
I see what
611.
I see what you're looking at.
Okay.
And it has my comment on it. I apologize. That's me.
That's
That's
okay.
my
I just want to
problem.
make sure that it came up for detail in case it was voted on tonight.
Yep. No, I just, like I say, we sat down and talked with both of these companies, and how we got into the 2 ballot thing is this whole thing of, like Leslie says, online, because they're saying I have to make a person one way or the other, because once they vote their ballot, I can't change it.
Yep. No, I agree with it. I think I'm glad that you guys had already covered that.
Yes, we did.
All right.
I apologize.
Mr. President, AJ.
I got a couple questions. I'm just kind of curious. So there's the quote from this company, and I'm wondering if we anticipate additional costs on top of this quote to run the election.
Okay. How do I say this? I don't think so. You know, that was part of the problem with election trust. And even though they were here, why we didn't select them, one of their parts of their quote that just flipped me out completely was where they only gave us 3 replacement ballots, and they charged $17.50 for each ballot. Oh, Lisa's eyes got big. And I asked them that question, and they're like, well, it's our time to process it and time to do this and time. And I'm like, no, they're going to handle, Unilec's going to handle all this. And one of the things, the last quote you have, I'm assuming is the 5, she signed at 5/11/2020. There's an option on the bottom of this, which is called incoming postage, and you should all be able to look at that. And if you add up all their numbers together, it comes up to $15,361.85. That last item is a $1,216 total. Many places that do third-party elections do incoming postage. And that way, they know for sure they've already put the postage on it and everything else. The only time we pay for it is when each one of these ballots come back. I went really high and said, assume there's going to be 1,900 of them that we have to pay for. We may have less than that. We may have more than that. If we opt to pay that, we can still have people, we can opt and do away with this total amount of money, the $1,216, by asking all of our members to put a stamp on it like they always have. We thought it would be a nice step to see, will it encourage people to return their ballots more? Will we have a bigger turnout? Maybe then, yeah, I could have a little bit of extra expense. I don't expect anything astronomical. But if you so choose and say, hey, people are going to have to put on their own stamps, I then am at $14,145.85. So that's a choice for you guys, that you can decide what you want to do.
AJ, do you have more questions?
Yeah, I had some additional questions. So I'm kind of curious. I'm wondering why. So one of these proposals is addressed to the board. One of them is addressed to Linda. One of them is addressed to Elisa Letchworth. And I'm wondering why all these proposals aren't addressed to a common person that put out an RFP. That seems a little strange to me. And I'm also very curious as to why Russ Harland, who is not a committee member, not I'm just kind of curious as to why he is involved in this process, and why that. I got some pretty major issues with that. I've heard, Linda, you talk about his experience with elections. Frankly, I don't really care about that, considering some of the things that have been perpetrated due to the viewpoints that he has. It really just doesn't sit well with me.
I don't share some of Russ's political views, but I served with him the very first time. And I think you all got a copy of this letter when I responded to another member that sent an email to the board regarding this. I have found, the first time I've ever served with Russ was in 2010. And I found that he may have some real issues with things, and he may write back to people in a very nasty way.
I'm sorry, I've got to interrupt here. Can we refrain from talking about members in this light?
I'm just saying, to me, there isn't anyone knows more about elections and how to handle third-party vendors and understand how they work different than our process a little bit than Russ, because he does have so much information. You know, Russ is, you know, besides knowing elections, he's served as a board president before, but I never found Russ to be anything but honest about it when it comes to this. I know that's hard to say for some people, but I have to say that, you know, he was just a wealth of information and understanding, and how to figure out our ballots would be different than what we have now, how vendors handle that sort of thing. And when you're looking at this, you want to get the very best process you can have for the board. I don't know in November if we can have 20 people in a room counting votes. Now, the governor may waive the board's ability to have a quorum so that they can conduct their business. Still doesn't say a damn thing about counters.
Mr. President, Paula.
Oh, hold on, I'm not done yet. So
I have a question directly related to that. Could I ask that?
sure.
Okay. Linda, Russ is a member, or this person is a member of the community in good standing, correct?
Yes, he owns 2 properties here, I believe.
Okay. Did this member personally choose or have any decision-making in the choice of this company?
No, when we voted as a committee. In fact, I believe he left the meeting before we all voted.
So the only people that voted on the decision of who to use on this were the
N&E
voted
committee.
on or appointed members of the N&E committee?
That's correct. And Ann Gray was missing from the meeting that night.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. President, back to AJ.
Yeah, I guess, you know, you've said all those things before, but in light of everything that happened with the last election and the amount of, you know, kind of distrust that seems to be perpetrated community-wide over the last couple years, or more than the last couple years, I just don't see how bringing him into the fold to even participate in the decision-making process when he's not on the committee is appropriate.
I think we should move on, Mr. President.
I'm done for now.
Go ahead, Mike.
I think we should move on, but I do have a question for Linda. Linda, under the main item on the page 6, towards the bottom of the first area, it says 1 toll-free phone number for members to contact Unilect for requests of duplicate ballots with activity report. Can you explain that, please?
So when we do our own elections, our ballots are mailed back here. When you have a third-party vendor do it, they have a post office box that they have only our ballots in. that are totally our people, and the ballots go back to them. Now, they're going to have the same kind of stamping and stuff we get from the post office to indicate that this address isn't, you can't forward it, whatever. They will notify us who these people are and how many they have. And then it's probably going to be Lisa's job to go ahead and find out, do we have a better address or anything else before they will even forward a ballot. But as soon as they collect, and I can't remember, I almost want to say, I think she said they do it every day, but I would have to get confirmation on that.
So then this is not for use if, let's say that I lose my ballot and I can't find it and I still want to vote. This is not a telephone number that I would call and request another ballot?
You could, yes. And they would probably check with Lisa. They would take a look at their records to see, did they have a ballot that you'd already voted? You know, and if they don't, I'm sure they'd be happy to issue you one. The other way that you could vote, if you still want to vote, is once again, you can vote in person on Saturday. But that's, I assume, how it works, is much like our process.
Thank you for your help.
Okay.
Can I ask my question? It's
Go, Karen,
an actual
go.
question.
Mike, I've been
Kid,
waiting here
this
forever for you
15,000
to acknowledge me.
Were you before me, Joshua?
I was
you
before
wanna go?
Paula even, but that's okay. I am patient. I think
so
you
was
should
I.
go first.
Okay, thank
Did you
you.
raise
I
your
appreciate it.
hand?
I did.
A bunch of times.
I
We both-
raised this hand and my blue hand.
Okay.
There's
My question
hands
is
everywhere,
easy.
Mike.
My question is very simple. This 15,362, if we include the total amount, including the incoming postage, how does that compare to the average amount we spend for an AGM?
We're right at the end of it. We normally, I think the most we spent recently, hold on. I have my magic sheet of paper here. It looks like we spent, back in 2016, we spent $16,483. Normally we're at like around 9, 10, I'd say right around 9 to 11,000. Part of what you're paying for is their travel time. That you end up paying for one way or the other. I was surprised that there wasn't that much difference between but how do I say this, between Election Trust and Unilect. And the one thing we've never done with any of our costing, and I think Lisa can back me up on this, I hope, is that these costs never include any of our staff time, never include any of her time that she spends doing registering and stuff. I don't know if we even charge for the setup of the meeting, that sort of thing. There's some of these costs, and I'd like Lisa to speak to that are never added into these numbers.
Sure. We went, per your request, went and checked the SGM because it doesn't really reflect correctly on the budget, because much of the expenses were actually paid for in December. So even though they were for the 2020 election, those invoices got paid in December. So the average, or the cost of this last SGM was about $12,000. But again, it, like you said, it did not include the legal bills. Those were charged to legal. It did include the parliamentarian. It did not include any labor costs for setup or tear down and the other, staff time to register ballots. We've never calculated that into the actual cost before, but we were asked to present what those costs were, just so you had an idea of how much the election did cost.
Mr. President, my apologies, Josh.
That's all right, Mike. So piggybacking off of Paula and Leslie's comment, that was one thing I was going to bring up, was the 2 ballot thing. And I see on the main items, it says design of all balloting materials, printing and mailing services, yada, 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 design of 1 ballot style. I definitely think we need some clarification on this. Not that I want to hold anything up, but I mean, that could mean anything. Design of balloting materials could be all of the stuff that goes with it, designing a one ballot style, hey, that's the look that you're going to get. So I don't know. I mean, that's a concern for me, because once, I guess if there is an issue with people, you know, going up to the last minute with their dues, and to be able to vote, they're going to have to do it in person, and that still puts it into the committee's hands, right? And that's what we're trying to avoid. And lastly, I did a little bit of just looking around on these companies, and Unilect has a couple of things that are a little bit worrisome about them. I know a few of these things have to deal with their machines, which we're not using, but there was an article about, you know, ballots received late, and that's a little bit odd. I'm not sure what kind of vetting you guys did. I'm sure you have done vetting, and I don't want to trample the efforts of the committee. But, you know, I don't know. I don't know if this is the best thing for us this year. I fully agree that this should be taken out of the hands of our committee members as much as possible so that there aren't any issues. But I just don't know if this company is the best. And you know, I'll disagree with Leslie. I think it should be all online. I mean, that's where we're all heading anyways. And, you know, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable with this company at this time. I feel like this is going to turn into a cluster, but that's just my opinion.
Mr. President, Rob.
Actually, was Karen next? Did you get your question? No. So thank you, Linda. A couple questions. If I recall, is there somebody in our elections that provides? I'm not sure if I'm using the right terminology from the NE policy, but they provide like oversight, sort of auditing the process of during elections. Isn't there somebody who audits that?
No, there's a master counter. We do an audit. We do not an audit. We do a certification at the very end where we usually pick, we'll take the total number of packets, take 10% of those. And then in pairs, we basically go over voted ballots in a 25 packs of 25 and confirm, were there any errors?
So it's kind of a
Who
sampling.
counted it? Were there any errors in the counting of any of the ballots? Did
Right.
somebody have a yes instead of a no? Did
So it's kind of a
somebody,
sampling plan to check the accuracy then, is that?
yes.
Is there?
You know, if there wasn't a call and ask for a recount this time, I was fully prepared to do a full recount. They withdrew their request, so we didn't do a full recount. But that's also an option if there's a challenge to the election results.
So in this, if we did pick Unilect or one of these other companies, will there be a sampling? Will we check their work? Will they do the sampling?
Go ahead. What I was going to say is much like we submit to know that every single one of these companies got a sample of what one of our packets look like, what our voter packets look like, what's all included and everything else. Just like we from our printer get a sample for us to all look at, we're going to get a sample from them.
Okay. And then
of what our stuff looks like, and they kind of know what I think what our stuff looks like.
And then once we move forward into, excuse me with my phone. Once we move forward into something like this, what do you see as the role of the NAE committee at that point?
Oh, how do I say this? This is only a contract for this year. I'm just concerned that come November, we still are not going to be able to put 20 people together in a room. You know, I know what I see on the news and I don't see anything encouraging. You know, I don't plan on going to Maui this year. I just, you know, I don't know what we do if we get to the point of where we can't have a gathering of people even for, you know, Lisa and N&E to do the vetting. Yeah, we could get in a room and do the vetting and stuff. But the counting and everything they do, I can't get away from at least 20 people.
Right, and based on what you just said and Joshua, what Joshua said, I agree. I think that going to an online process is the way to go.
Well,
Yeah,
then you
but
got a
you
big
gotta- you
discussion,
gotta-
then you have a whole nother discussion for
Right.
another day that you all have to look at.
Peace, I'm with you. I'm just saying that I think that that's where we ought to be looking is you gotta crawl before you can walk, and I totally get why we're having a third party do this, but I think going forward, I agree with Joshua. I think that an online process is where we should go.
Mr. President, AJ.
Mike, I apologize for interjecting here, guys. Just wanted to bring it to your attention here. Also, Steffi Jones has had her hand up with the little digital icon for a little bit here.
Okay, she
Can't
might have
see
been
it.
before me. She can go before me. You're on mute, Steffi.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Okay. I was just gonna say, Rob brought up if we have an oversight committee, and Linda said no, but I was wondering, have we ever had an oversight committee? Because that might be, that might be just the whole solution to any problem.
It would have to be someone. There are people that are election, and I can't think what they're called specifically, but they basically just stand and watch everything you do.
Monitors.
And there are those types of individuals that do that. And no, over the years, you know, I can only speak the years I've been here. We used to do proxies long time ago. We could go back to that too. You know, but I'm saying we've never had that oversight because it's somebody that you have to hire separately because it can't be anybody in this association.
Mr. President.
And once again, I think you pay a fee for that.
Mr. President, back to AJ.
All right, so I don't know. I think in light of the fact that there are still a lot of people who have concerns about the last election we had and everything that occurred, I tend to agree with a lot of what Joshua said about concerns of trying to push this forward this year. I'm going to make a motion to refer the question to an election task force to be comprised of 2 board directors, 2 N&E members, the master counter, a minimum of 2 recent counters and observers, 1 staff, 1 recall petition representative, and up to 5 interested community members to make up the remainder of the task force. The task force will be tasked with determining how we can secure our paper ballot election process, research and recommend what type of third-party oversight would be best for the Sudden Valley Community Association election process, and develop a fair and secure Sudden Valley election process.
Well, that's real interesting, except once again, I'll say to you, what are you going to do if in November you can't have 20 people together?
Mr.
If we
President,
can't
if I
have
may
20 people,
interject,
then they can't have 20 people.
if I may interject,
Yes, Mike,
Oh,
we have a motion on the floor.
right.
we do.
So if AJ is making a motion, he's making an amended motion and not a motion.
Was that your intention, AJ, just for the record?
I am making a motion to refer to a special committee.
Should be an amended motion because there's already a motion on the floor.
That's what he said in the beginning.
It is a motion to refer to a committee is considered a subsidiary motion.
Is there a second?
I second.
Discussion?
There's no discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's discussion.
Yeah, there's discussion. Why is there no discussion?
Because it's amended.
No, there's discussion allowed on a refer motion per Robert's rules.
Okay.
I think I'd like to point out on your motion, and I know where you got your motion from there, buddy. Normally the board, and there's a reason for that, that the only board member that's on N&E is the chair of N&E. And I don't know if you're gonna propose a task force, exactly, so the N&E committee is supposed to do all this besides what they regularly do getting ready for this election? Is that what you expect?
No, the task force would be run by, I would think the task force would be chaired by one of the two board directors that would be on it. And
Mr. President, Karen has her hand up.
I'm just curious how this better represents the community than an N&E committee, which is elected by the
The N&E
community.
committee wasn't really elected. There's what, 2 people on the N&E committee that are elected right now?
I
That's
understand
correct.
that, but we do have bylaws that set up an N&E committee, which allows any community member to run for a position to be elected by the community. And that is a very well-established process. I'm not quite sure what we're going to gain by reinventing the wheel and creating an additional committee to do what the N&E committee, they are literally the nominations and election committee, and the N&E is elected by the community.
And
The fact that not enough
this
people
N&E
ran
committee
this
was not
year,
elected by the community.
but any community member was welcome to run. They were welcome to have their opinions known. They were welcome to run and to be on that committee. So the fact that that not enough chose to be, or we've had a change in it, is not the fault of the N&E committee. It's the willingness of people to run. Linda's been doing it for how long? Because no one else runs. So if we want additional voices in N&E, people should run for N&E. They've been asking for years to get more volunteers there.
And that's
So,
fine.
wait.
And this is no disrespect to Linda or anything like that, but a lot
Mr.
of the
President.
community has concerns about what happened with the last election, and then
Mr.
to
President.
charge them with the oversight
Mr.
of making
President.
sure the election is fair and secure.
Mr.
seems a bit
President.
counterproductive.
Okay, let's stick to our standard processes here, folks. Mike, go ahead.
Rob has his hand up.
Thank you. So this is just an observation. It seems like we're not, this motion, it seems like we don't like the work that the NNE committee has done. So we want to go do it for them. Just a observation.
Oh, no.
I think what we need to do is the committees that are in place, we ought to respect the work that they have done and consider, take good consideration of what it is that they're proposing to us rather than going out and trying to recreate that process. And then a question is, how would the 5 interested property owners be chosen? What would be the criteria? What would be the selection criteria? I just don't understand how that would be done. Thank you.
That could be decided by us now. And it also could be determined by the chair of the committee to pick his community members based on them submitting applications.
Looks like we do have a hand raised from the audience.
I'd just like to say something with this whole thing, if we're gonna get back to the elections and everything else. There's no better way than getting an independent third party. Nobody's got any, these people don't have any skin in your game. And you read this lovely thing, 3 of the people that put that together, I have asked on different occasions to please consider running for N&E. And none of them have.
I apologize for interrupting
Paula
here.
has her
Steffi
hand
Jones has had her hand raised with the little blue icon.
I apologize, John, but I cannot see the icon that you're speaking of. I
Okay.
can only see a hand.
Okay. Steffi, if you could raise your hand in the camera, and I think Mike will be able to
Okay.
see it in the future.
All right.
Okay.
Steffi, before you start, Paula had her hand up.
Okay.
If she's had her hand up, I'm willing to yield over. I didn't see that.
I don't care.
No, you.
Go ahead, Paula. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, of course, this came in a letter form to us earlier today, and I had a chance to look at it from some members of the community. I won't name them because I feel that naming community members is extremely, absolutely unprofessional in a board meeting. But I just want to point out a couple of things here, and that is putting 2 board directors onto a committee in which this very specifically says that they should be overseeing the elections process is to me absolutely unprofessional. You can't have board directors, and how would they be appointed? You cannot have board directors overseeing an elections committee, because that's the whole reason that you have a separate committee and an NNE chair that doesn't vote. It just, that I could not vote for this on that alone. Putting board members over elections doesn't make any sense. And somebody else already raised the other ones, is how would you choose your 2 NNE members? How would you choose your master counter or your counters? I appreciate where it's going. I don't agree with it, but I can appreciate the effort that went into it. But I don't think that this is well thought out enough to put to a vote this evening.
Mr. President, Steffi.
I think that people were misunderstanding that was anything, that this proposal was anything to do with Linda or the job that she's done. That's not it at all. And I also don't think that we can say to community members, well, you should have ran, back in November, and then they're upset about the way the vote turned out. They don't feel like questions were answered. So just having a check and balance, somebody else to report to, a group of people to report to for transparency. It just seemed like, oh, okay, here, this is a solution. It just seemed like, well, I mean, I just think getting the information out there, having people see firsthand, having a mix of people on that committee, and I know it's hard not to take this stuff personal. It just is, I don't know. It feels like we just keep doing the same things and we keep going around and around. And I would just love to, I don't know, get that information out there. I just feel like it would really squelch a lot of questions or concerns that were going to come up.
Mr. President, Karen, then Leslie.
Knowing how things have gone before, I think even in forming this task force would cause questions and contention, because that's how things have gone so far. This is, again, why I support an NNE committee that is elected by the community. And that is, again, like Paula brought up, separate from the board, so that oversight actually exists and there isn't a conflict of interest between board members and elections. And those members are elected by the community.
Mr. President, Leslie.
I agree with what Karen was just saying, and also the fact that the NNE committee is called out in our bylaws, and their function is also described in there and what they're supposed to do. And it concerns me that another group, another committee is being proposed to duplicate the work of the NNE committee, which is, as I said, it's in the bylaws, that's what we'll control.
You guys keep saying that they're going to do the job. Nobody said that they were going to do it.
Mr. President, AJ, and then if I may, I'd like to call the question.
I guess for me, I heard a number of people here express concerns about the original motion and proposal. I have issues referring it back to the N&E committee due to the fact that, a number of community members have not felt like that the election process was resolved. I mean, it's obviously behind us in the board agenda stuff, but that doesn't mean the community's over it, and that doesn't mean that it didn't continue to deteriorate the lack of trust that already exists here. And further, you can say what you want about the N&E committee. State law and our bylaws are perfectly clear that the board has the authority, the duty, and the duty to run the entirety of the association. No committee has any authority over the board. So the N&E isn't some autonomous committee like some people like to try to present it as. It is the board's responsibility to make sure that the election process is fair and secure. And it is also the N&E committee's responsibility to do that. But that doesn't mean that the N&E committee has the ultimate authority in that, or that it absolves the board of those duties. It doesn't. And so, where I'm at, we can continue to hash out the details of what a task force would look like. But I have concerns of sending the review of this back to an N&E committee that perpetrated what has occurred. It just doesn't, logically, it just doesn't make sense to me that we would go down that road. Now, we can adjust who the members of said task force are, who would be the chair, how we present those processes. That all can be hashed out right now in this discussion and be part of the motion. Robert's rules is pretty clear that we're allowed to do that sort of thing with this type of motion, as this type of thing, like you said, isn't just like simple cut and dry. And then that's why there's also discussion allowed on a motion such as this, as opposed to laying on the table, which doesn't allow it.
Okay, we've had, thanks AJ, we've had significant discussion on this topic. Do we want to go ahead and call the question?
Call the question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye to the amended motion. Do we want to repeat the motion as stated? AJ, please.
I move to refer the question to a special election task force to be comprised of 2 board directors, 2 N&E members, the master counter, a minimum of 2 recent counters observers, 1 staff, 1 recall petition representative, and up to 5 community members. The task force would be formed to determine how we can secure our existing paper ballot election process, research or recommend what type of third-party oversight will be best for the Sun Valley Community Association election process, and develop a fair and secure Sun Valley Community Association election process.
Okay, thank you, AJ. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, the motion does not carry. So now we go back to the original motion, which is to Linda's N&E's recommendation to authorize staff, I believe, to move forward with Unilec's proposal at the amount of $12,700 plus the
Wait a minute.
estimated.
You don't actually, how do I say this?
It
all
wasn't worded
depends-
that way.
Okay, go ahead and recite the motion, please. Thanks.
It was a motion to approve N&E third-party vendor for the 2020 AGM. It was short and sweet.
Thank you. Always go back to your trusted. So, okay, thanks, Paula. So motion as stated, is there, we'll call the question.
Wait, what?
Mr. President, we actually have two hands. Now we have
Oh.
three hands, starting with Josh, then Leslie, then AJ.
So what was the major, without going in here again, I've looked at this stuff and it's a lot, but what was the major differentiator, Linda, between this outfit and the Washington one?
How do I say this? It had to do with how complete the response was from Unilect. I was really concerned with overages I can run into because of election trust, the whole thing that they put in there that they weren't ready to take out of there with the whole thing of how much it costs to do a replacement ballot. Plus, their initial total did not include if we do return by mail. And that's something you would still have to decide with this vendor that I would want the board to decide upon what they wanted to do. But those are just a couple of them, you know? I kind of was fooling around with them with how many pages to the booklet. And I don't have that issue with Unilect. I know that if I need a 20-page booklet, I'm going to get a 20-page booklet, you know, and chances are we're going to have at least 4, if not 5 board applicants come for, you know, for at least come November. It could be a big ballot, you know. I know there's some things that we'd like to move through with bylaw amendments, that sort of thing. So I guess when I looked at their stuff and in talking to them, I just feel they have a really good grip on this. That's all. You know, they handle, how do I say it? They're out of California. They do Davis Sterling, which makes when you get to HOAs and things that cover elections and stuff, you don't get any tougher than Davis Sterling. People quote that all the time. And I think they probably have, I just approve of their process, you know, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Mr. President, Leslie.
Yeah, I think I do actually have the answer to my question here. I was looking at number 10, where it says that the packet itself is not just the ballot, but they will include all of the booklets and all of the ballot materials and everything that they send us. I also do understand why they would want to design the ballot itself, because I think what they're looking for is something that they can more easily handle when it comes back in. As long as it has all of the information on it, I am not concerned about them designing the ballot itself, as long as it's got the information on it.
Mr. President, AJ.
So I guess I still, you know, I guess I just have major concerns with where we're at, and I just, you know, it feels like I don't know. I'm really struggling with the fact that we allow this community member, regardless of how he's participated previously in the association, to participate in this stuff, when observers who wrote a letter with concerns with the last election process were told by a certain NNE committee member that they had no ability to address
Yeah, I
the
think
committee at all.
we've already talked through
President.
that discussion. Go ahead, Mike.
I just think that we're going down a road we've been down 3 times now, and I call the question on the motion.
Okay, all those in favor, or can we repeat the motion, please? I won't try to butcher
Sorry,
it again.
Paula.
Paula.
No, it's good. I like Linda's motions because they're really short.
Me
She's very
too.
concise. I love it. The motion is to approve NNE third-party vendor at the 2020 AGM.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Great, motion does carry. Thank you, Linda, and thank you for the healthy discussion,
Can I
everyone.
ask one last favor of you folks? And that's the thing I've been talking to you about. Do you want to go ahead and include the incoming return postage where they will get basically a postage paid envelope back? And
Yes.
then, and that will, it kind of gives them a lot of extra help and stuff in doing that. And it might increase the number of people who return ballots to us, or you can save the money and I am then under my $15,000 budget.
I say include it. Include the postage.
I
I
agree.
agree.
I agree.
I'll give you
Probably need
the,
to-
I'll give you the 361.85. I thought it was a really good idea and I didn't understand it at first. But if we can do that, I think it's good. And that's only if we get 1,900 ballots back. You know, that might be a little bit more if I don't, and you know, that's a high number, folks.
I think
You
you need
know,
to
and
make
I-
a motion.
I may,
I'm not sure that she
It's
does.
gonna be okay, Mike.
It's included in the estimate. Would we still need a motion for it? Because it's included in our.
no, it's included, no, because it is included in the estimate. It'd be just if you, if you chose to not.
Chose to
add
remove
that
it?
part to it.
Mr. President, after the discussion and the vote, Josh raised his hand.
Can I ask a question? Or is this completely out of line if I ask a question now to any?
Go ahead, Josh.
Don't worry, it's not dramatic or anything. So what's the plan with the bylaws, online voting, and all that kind of stuff? Is there a plan for the future, next year? What are we looking at? Can you answer that, or is that?
I
something
can,
we
you
need to
got
talk
10
about later?
minutes. We're going on 9 o'clock here, folks. How do I say this? The biggest thing that we have to overcome is the fact that I believe since, and I'd have to look back in my documents, but I think I'm close to right, and Leslie might be able to back me up. She's been an N&E chair before and past, you name it. But forever and a day, in order to vote on everything on a ballot, you have to be in good standing or current in your dues. The state, when they enacted the first HOA Act back in 1995, said on the budget, you just had to be a member. And we couldn't argue with that because we didn't even have the word budget in our bylaws at that time because we voted on dues to support the operation of this HOA. So we never had the word budget in there ever. There were budgets presented to us, but as far as a requirement, no. So our attorney told us you have to start voting on budget. You have to have a budget measure. And since 1995, we have. Prior to that, you can go back and look. We never had a budget measure. And it would be, and it's going to be a long discussion between all of you. Do you just simply say, if you are a member of Sudden Valley, and it's currently how even it's written in the new state law, you vote on everything, whether you're current in your dues or not. That's the big change and that's going to be the hurdle that if it's this board, you will all have to overcome.
You just got to keep that collection rate up, huh?
You know, I just, you know, that's the thing that's so hard to say. I think at the last SGM, we ended up with only 9 people that couldn't vote because they weren't current, because that wasn't even a budget. That was on removing boards of director. And in theory, you can't even vote on that if you're not current in your dues.
Mr. President, time to move on to.
I know, I'm just saying, this is so, you know, we could look at it this year, but I think it's something that needs to be done this next year, but then it won't take effect. The people still have to vote on it. So you're 2 to 3 years out.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Good question, Joshua. And thanks, Linda. Okay, and now we'll move into New business item number B, hiring and spending freeze discussion. Go ahead, AJ.
Okay. This was obviously brought forward last meeting we had. I move the adoption of the following resolution, be it resolved as stated in the materials provided for the agenda packet, with one minor update to make sure that the date on the resolution, if it ends up being adopted, matches the date that it was adopted, because currently it has the last board meeting's date. Yeah. Is there a second?
Second.
So,
Discussion.
Mr. President, Leslie.
It's my motion. I have first right to speak during the debate per Robert's rules.
Can I ask who seconded? I couldn't hear it. I'm sorry.
Josh.
Thank you.
So this is where I'm at. In I believe it was the March 26th board meeting, the board ended up ratifying Leslie and Andrew's action to declare an emergency and waive the dues for the month of April for the members. It was stated at that time that we were waiving approximately $200,000 from our ops budget. At the time, it was stated that we had an $82,000 surplus that we could put towards that $200,000. We could tighten our ops expenses to help cover that shortfall. And we also had an additional $604,000 in emergency reserves and UDR that could potentially help cover that shortfall as well. We additionally waived approximately $213,000 from our capital budget or our capital dues. We have no plan at this point to make up that loss. The only thing that was stated was that we would push projects out to future years, which actually just exasperates the shortfall by creating future years' money increases to projects. So it doesn't actually address the shortfall at all. In that meeting, we had quite a bit of discussion. Leslie had stated that we don't know what will happen going forward and that we will likely need to discuss this at every board meeting moving forward. Karen had stated that we needed to reforecast our budget due to the COVID issues and how our finances are impacted. She additionally stated that going off of last June's numbers from when we did the budget for this year is not really accurate given the circumstances that we're in. Paula agreed that we needed to do a rolling forecast. Andrew agreed as well, and asked who puts that together, staff or the finance committee, what kind of deadlines would be associated with that. Leslie said that staff needs to be directed to do that. And it was additionally said that Joel stated that we don't know yet what the ramifications will be of the COVID issue to the association. Joe had said that they are working on this daily and will be providing a forecast for us. At this point, Linda also brought up the fact that we were 2 months behind on our financials when historically we're only usually 1 month behind. Joel said at that time that we'd be catching up over the next few months. We're still waiting to catch up. We're still waiting for a budget forecast for what the only budget forecast that I've seen came in the finance committee's agenda packet, and Joel stated it was a computer generated forecast that we should basically just wholly dismiss completely because it's not really indicative of where we're at. So January budget showed that we were 75K under budget on ops. February budget showed that we were 22K over budget on ops. That left us a 52K surplus year to date end of February. March budget shows we were 67K under budget, leaving 120K surplus at the end of March year to date. The April budget in this next Wednesday's Finance Committee packet shows a loss of 195,000, which correlates directly to the waiver of April's dues. This leaves us at a $76,000 budget deficit year to date for the end of April. May, we do not know. We do not have the financials. They have not been shared with us at this point. So everyone had a lot of discussion, and I think it seemed like we were all on the same page that we needed to watch this and we needed to do some stuff with our budget to handle this. And so some things that I noticed with both this year's budget and next year's budget, Joe brought forth a geotech, a capital request for geotech report for a new project for Marina Armoring. We ended up paying overtime during a time when operations were reduced due to the COVID stay-at-home orders by the governor. Those are two things that don't seem, in my eyes, to line up with our discussion that we had at that board meeting and how we talked about the need to figure out how to address this shortfall. As far as next year's budget goes, I have big concerns that golf is projecting aggressive, like 11% increases in revenue, and is also being allowed to project a loss for next year when we have all of this stuff going on. And we've had so many people email us their concerns about where they're at financially with this COVID stuff. You know, there's 3% salary raises across the board being proposed in every department. We're also assuming an increased collection rate for next year. None of these things.
We are talking about this year. I'm sorry. The budget discussion for next year is separate. Let's talk about the
This is
spending
not
resolution.
separate. COVID just doesn't end at the beginning of
Resolution says
2020, and please don't interrupt my
31st.
time.
It says December 31st, and we need to stay on topic with this. This is a long discussion anyway, and your resolution
This is
specifically
all
says
relevant
December
stuff to the
31st.
budget. Please don't interrupt my time. So things we don't know moving forward. We don't know how many of our members are actually impacted by the federal or by the state mandated shutdowns and stay-at-home orders from a financial perspective. We don't know how those financial impacts to our members are going to affect our collection rate moving forward. I think what we know is, what is it, 40 million people so far? Maybe Norm has the number handy since he's pretty enveloped in all this stuff. 40 million people have applied for unemployment right now in this country, which is an astronomical number. We have no real forecast on what we could expect from revenues from golf, the pool, all our other revenue sources. We have no idea how opening back up the economy will impact COVID cases, whether we could see regression to prior phases due to outbreaks such as the I can't remember what Norm called it, the party fiasco, I'll call it. We have no idea if a second or third wave, which they predict will happen, will occur, and how the governor and the state will handle those. If we could see further restrictions again or shutdowns again. I think in essence, this resolution memorializes a lot of our discussion that we had at the meeting where we waived the April dues with the board ratifying that decision. So, you know, for me, I support the resolution, as I believe it does pretty well memorialize that discussion that we had, and how we need to address the finances of the association moving forward.
Mr. President, Leslie.
Yes. First of all, it was pointed out that I did make a mistake in making the motion, and I was shown, you know, this booklet, and you're absolutely right. Instead of making a motion to table, my motion should have been to postpone. And I am at the same place right now where I need a lot more financial information than we have. That will be coming up with a discussion at the Finance Committee meeting on Wednesday. I think that that will provide a certain background on risks and things that we are working on right now with what's going forward. Also, I would like input from staff as to if we do not fulfill these projects, what will it mean to the community by not carrying out the capital projects and the hiring? What will be impacted if we do not do those things? And therefore, I would like to make what I hope is a proper motion at this time to postpone this discussion until the end of June, which was my original intention, when we will have input from both the Finance Committee and from staff. Your second?
Second.
Discussion.
This motion can be discussed.
Mr. President, Karen.
Sorry, can we have discussion right now? I'm
Yes.
hearing we can't. Huh?
Yes.
Yes. a
Only motion you can't discuss is a motion to lay on the table.
Okay.
We discussed the motion to postpone.
I'm discussing the motion to postpone.
Yes.
So if this question is out of line, I guess, AJ, you said there was a lot of things that we don't know. What financial data was your resolution based on? You said a lot of things that we don't know. Then what were you basing it on to get a sense that this would get us whole or keep us whole?
This is not a motion to get us or keep us whole. This is a motion to memorialize the fact that we need to, it was said so many times in that meeting that we should be discussing this at every board meeting, that we would have forecast. We have none of that. We've done none of that. We've gotten none of that information. It's been almost 3 months and we're still sitting here and we're moving into budget talks for next year with no forecasted budget for this year. I mean, you even said it, Karen, your words that using June's numbers is not an accurate assessment given the current circumstances of the COVID. Like going off of a budget that was created a year ago based on a lot of assumptions that have not come to fruition because of the COVID stuff is, I mean, this resolution doesn't even really restrict staff in any significant way. It literally allows them to spend the appropriated budget amounts. It allows them to continue to move forward capital projects that are already moving forward. But it memorializes the fact that we need to slow down, take a good hard look and develop a strategy because we have no idea how long this is actually going to last. The effects on golf revenue could be well into next year. The effects on pool revenue are probably, I don't know how much we actually make on pools. Sure, it's not as much as golf, but they'll be affected as well. People are going to not want to just participate in that stuff this year just due to a fear factor. And then there's a lot of people who won't care and will show up. You know, so it's just, that's mostly what this does is it memorializes the fact, and it just creates a need for additional discussion to happen around major decisions, essentially, like hiring new staff. It doesn't prevent Joe from hiring new staff. It just says he needs to come to the board and just explain why we need this vital position, and it shouldn't be a problem. And from what I've seen and what's been provided, that this is, you know, I don't think this is going to hamstring Joe, and I think he's well on his way to even doing some of these things already. So,
I would disagree with that, AJ.
I do too.
I apologize for stepping in here too. Steffi Jones is also raising her hand at this time.
Let Steffi go first. If I can come after Steffi, please, Mike.
Okay. Steffi's picture is not on here, so therefore I cannot see her hand.
You're on mute.
You're mute.
Thank you. Sorry, I had my hand up. I support this also. I feel like we are being responsible and holding and holding back a little bit. I mean, I've heard discussions in the finance committee where we've been, I don't know, I just feel like the community's been represented. So I feel like this is just a show of good faith. I don't think that this is, I guess I'm operating on the premise that everyone agrees that this isn't over. I should probably gather that information. That does everyone think that this is over? This is just going to fade away? Because other viruses that are similar have made a comeback every fall, and we don't have a vaccine. So I'm going with the premise that it's not over, and that we don't know what's going to happen, and that come fall with the flu season, the healthcare community is concerned about a large comeback. So, I mean, I think that it's important. And we have gotten tons of emails and I've gotten a lot of people reaching out to me. So I'm supporting this for the community.
Mr. President, we have Linda and then you, Andrew.
I think the thing that I would like to see, and I brought this up before, and I'm not certain that the new spreadsheet that I saw, although I haven't seen the brand new one yet because I just got back on the website this morning because last night it was unavailable for the finance committee, that there was formally, the only thing that we had seen was a list put out for 2019, 2020, and 2021 back in 2019 for the projects that were there. I think I would like to see them absolutely say, okay, here are the projects. Here are the $213,890 in projects that aren't going to be done. And what is that going to leave us? I don't know. In operations, there's certainly ways, Lisa, and I know Joe knows, if we're not going to, here, a couple examples. If we're not going to have the 4th of July and the Bite of Sudden Valley, maybe we'll get to have breakfast with Santa. But I'm saying there's two major expenses there that we're not going to be spending money on. We should know how that's going to adjust our events budget. It's money that can be rolled back into a budget for something then. There's a concern that we now have, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm reading the financials correctly, we have somebody that's marina staff that isn't in our budget at all this year. And I guess that should be something fairly easy that Joel can show us what's that amount going to be. We're not going to have the 95,000 in revenue that we had last year from the marina, because most of that's going to go to pay for this staffer, it looks like, if I look at 2021.
Mr.
So
President,
there's
point of order, we're discussing postponement.
I understand they're asking, AJ made the point of this, and I'm saying if you're going to postpone it, there's some things I would like to see finance be looking at if we're looking at adjusting our budgets. Is that out of line?
Mr. President, you're up.
Thanks, Mike. So just two things. First, AJ, is I'd just like to know what involvement staff had in the development of your resolution.
I did not involve staff at all. I wrote this resolution myself with input from many other jurisdictions, resolutions of similar nature. It's not really, it's a resolution of the board, not of staff. These are while staff is fine to be able to provide input on it, they don't vote on it. It's not really. Yeah. I don't feel that it was needed to be run through staff first before I brought this to the board. That is the point of bringing this resolution to the board.
Okay, very good. So the second you mentioned staff input, I just want to give staff the space now to provide input on your resolution.
Joel, go ahead. You've got the financials there in front of you. I do not have them here with me.
Okay, in terms of like a projection that I put together based off of the, right now, the most accurate thing is based off of April numbers and then building into budget numbers going forward through the rest of the year. Like, for example, I know Linda Bradley brings up every single board meeting about coming up with financial statements immediately
Is
after
this the
month end.
information we need to decide whether to postpone it or not?
Excuse me?
Is this information we need to decide whether or not to postpone it? Or is this germane to the discussion of the motion itself?
I'll just go back to the germane.
I think it would be, I mean, as far as input from staff and Joel, I think it would be more germane to the original motion put out by AJ. The one that you brought to postpone, this would not have anything to do with the postponement. This would be filling in some of the questions and the gaps that the people might have.
Mr. President, we have Karen and Josh and Lisa
Paula's in
and
there.
Paula.
Paula, were you before me or after? And then Rob is in there somewhere.
I don't even.
Rob's in there too?
It's
Yeah,
been up
Rob's
there
in
for
there.
a while, but I'm okay.
Please remember.
Well, I'll join the party too then.
Please remember.
Regarding
that
Leslie's got to work for this proposal.
Regarding the motion to postpone, first of all, I want to say I am not, as we said in the previous discussion back in March, that this is something we need to look at. We need to keep an eye on it. I'm not at all opposed to the idea of reducing our spending and really, really watching this closely. At the same time, we do have additional information now. So I don't want to base it off of a discussion we had in March. I want to base it off of the most up-to-date information that we have. I have gathered information requests from the Finance Committee, and we have already started working on information to bring to them with our final April financials, which were they're hot off the presses, just published today. Some forecasting that Joel has worked on, a whole slew of things to put this into context so that if we are making decisions about how to go forward, it is based on the most up-to-date information that we have, and we're going to continue to move forward. Also, we did not have in that March meeting PPP numbers, which have to factor into this. That makes a big difference in what our available funds are. Now, the last thing I will say is that this absolutely affects staff and how they go about their day-to-day. They're used to making decisions and coming to the board. It absolutely affects their ability to make decisions and to react quickly to things. And I do want to get their input into how this will affect their day-to-day. So I support the motion to postpone because I think that at the Finance Committee meeting, we can have a robust discussion about a lot of different financial aspects, which we are simply missing right now. And in order to have a really good discussion about a financial spending resolution, we absolutely must put it in context of financial data.
Mr. President, we have Josh.
I just wanted to chime in real quick. I see you guys do have that on your agenda for tomorrow. Since Linda graciously just gave away all of our spending for communications committee events and stuff like that, can you please, involve us if any of those numbers change? It was just a joke, Linda, since we're not having all these events, there's obviously funds.
No one's laughing.
Just so we know.
No one's
Sorry,
laughing, Josh.
That's all right. I'm gonna go crawl into my hole after this. So
Mr.
Joshua,
President,
I'm
you
not
guys know what
saying
I'm saying, right?
if we change your budget, we're not,
Yeah.
what I want to do is make sure we don't end the year in a deficit. That's my whole goal. I'm not
That
gonna
sounds
steal your
great.
funds. Yeah. Okay, so we'll work on that. I will let you know if we take any of your funds. Mike is killing me.
Mr. President, Paula.
So I actually support, and I want to put this out there. I really wanted to be able to say this at the last meeting, but we weren't able to have the conversation. I do want to wait to vote on this until staff and finance committee have had their input, not because they make the decisions, because obviously they don't, but I think that as a board, we have a responsibility to garner as much information on that, because AJ, I agree with you. Like you said, I mean, you quoted me, we don't have enough information. I would love to see information that we just don't have in front of us. And with so much information that we don't have, I really think that we need to have some information. While there are some wording differences that I have with the resolution as it stands, and some questions that I would love that I'm hoping that we can hash out at the next one once we have more information. I'm not against a lot of the memorialization and putting boundaries and things around this. I think some of them go a little far into micromanaging staff that I want to have a discussion about, that I have concerns about. But that being said, it's not that, I don't know that anybody on this call absolutely doesn't want to memorialize and put those boundaries around things that we're doing. I just want to have all of the information, which is why I supported last week moving it to the next board meeting after the finance committee meeting. And I would still support this for the same reasons, that I think we need more information, and that's what our finance committee is tasked with, and that's what our staff is tasked with. And if we don't listen to them, then we're not utilizing all the resources in front of us.
Mr. President, Rob.
I think everybody said the sentiments that I'm thinking as well, really well. One thing I do recognize that this pandemic is huge. It's something we can't take lightly. It's everything in our society has been tipped upside down over this. I think it would be good for the finance committee to maybe get some more up-to-date information. Linda brought up the marina. A lot of you guys know I'm down there a lot. Every wet slip's filled. There is such a demand on the dries that Maddie's been creating some additional spots down there to create more revenue. Josh and Steffi and I talked last year about maybe how to market and to try to get some more revenue out of that. That's probably too late for this year, but I'm thinking that there's a chance that revenues that may not occur with the pool, with those new slips and with all of the wets filled, there could be some additional revenues coming out of that particular rec item. And then the last thing is, I really want to, everybody's been saying this, but I really want to better understand the capital projects. If I recall, Joe mentioned a couple that had to do with drainage issues where Sudden Valley infrastructure was actually flooding homeowners' properties. Maybe I didn't hear that right, Joe. You have a perplexed look. Okay, so
no, you did not. The drainage issues are just our culverts and stuff that we have to maintain.
Okay. Anyway, so I think I need to better understand what those capital projects are, and there's probably some things that we may want to push off as a result of what's happening with the COVID. And I guess one of the things that I'm wondering is are we anticipating that people aren't going to be able to pay dues as a result of this? I mean, that's probably, when I read the resolution, I'm thinking, well, are we projecting that may occur to people? And I'm recognizing that people's lives are turned upside down. I've got kids living here because they've been furloughed, so I get that, AJ. it's meaningful and it touches my emotions and my heart. I'm sitting here in my, you know, in this meeting and we're talking about people and that matters to me. But I need more data, and that's why I would support tabling.
Mr. President, AJ, remember now you've spoken 4 times on this issue. So please keep it as brief as possible so that we can move forward.
So for me, basically, the only thing the resolution really hamstrings staff with is hiring of staff. You know, the rest of the stuff, it allows Joe to push capital projects forward that are already going on. I recognize that pushing projects out that are already ready to go to future years is not a good decision.
Remember now, AJ, remember we're talking about the postponement.
Yep, I understand.
So we're not talking about the resolution that you have.
Yeah, I get it. So for me, I just, you know, postponing the resolution so that finance committee, you know, looks at like this in my eyes is just one step in probably a series of resolutions that we need to make after we get the actual forecasted budget numbers. If those are going to be discussed at the finance committee, why aren't they in the agenda packet? I don't recall seeing them in there. You know, staff has had multiple weeks now to look at this and could have provided input on this, but Leslie couldn't allow discussion on the actual motion before postponing it. And so here we are again, being hamstrung by Mr. D'Angelo being a stickler and making us follow the rules on discussion topics, and not being able to actually discuss what we all want to discuss. Like, why do we have to do this all the time? This isn't working together.
Mr. President, Karen.
We always knew that April financials, which is when we had no revenue, wouldn't be done until the end of this month. That was one of the big things with waiting, is to be able to see the full impact of April before making decisions going forward.
We were told we were going to get back to 1 month behind financials 3 months ago.
Mr. President, Lisa.
I just wanted to hopefully offer a little bit of encouragement on the high. What's that? I thought I heard somebody. On the hiring issue, we did not hire a new employee. We replaced an employee that we had to lay off during COVID and brought them in at a lower rate of pay because we're not having to use an agency to do so. We still have the same FTE in admin as we always did. And there is no intention to bring in any new staff. Again, I know that perhaps if through natural attrition, it might have to be examined whether a replacement, if someone were to leave, would be necessary, or if we could we could spread the workload and do without. Obviously, those things would be discussed later. But just knowing, you know, that since AJ, you said that would be the one restriction, you should know that we're also restricting ourselves.
Mr. President, call the question.
Yeah, okay, let's go ahead and call the question, and the motion is to postpone. Can Paula recite the motion?
You don't want me to recite the entire original motion.
This is for the amended motion.
This one was to amend to the next finance meeting, or to the next board meeting.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Okay, the motion does carry. So this is postponed. We'll put it on the agenda at the next regular scheduled board meeting. Okay, we'll move into property owner comments.
All right. Any property owners that would like to add their comments, just use the raise hand feature in Zoom. And I will bring you in here. If you are calling in, you can press *9 on your phone and it should have the same same feature. And that feature should be present on both the app version as well as on the PC or Mac. I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time.
Okay, thanks, John.
Mhm.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Have a great evening, everyone. Stay healthy.
Thank you, you too.
Have a great evening.
Thanks.